All right, welcome to the Delicious Recap Family Matters. I'm John Francois, and who are you?
I am AJ Vandertunt.
What character are you this week?
Oh, this week, forgive me, I am going to be Eddie Winslow.
And I think that makes sense because Eddie Winslow, for a good portion of the episode, plays a card game as a really tasking way to distract Alan from the fact that Rachel is too nervous to go downstairs and meet him for their date. And speaking of Alan, whoa, who are we going to talk to, Andrew?
We're going to talk to Alan, Peter Fitzsimmons.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, God, I like that. We're going to talk to Alan. Let's get serious. Peter Fitzsimmons.
Yes.
Peter Fitzsimmons, a wonderful actor, a jazz enthusiast, as we're going to learn. We're going to talk, of course, about his experience on Rachel's First Date, the fourth episode overall of Family Matters, where Carl and Harriet, they are sick and freaking tired of Auntie Rachel, who lives with them, always tacking along with them as a third wheel on their dates. So they basically force Rachel to go out with this guy that she knows from the church choir, Alan. And Alan, being only the second guest star on Family Matters, I think that's all the more reason why it's so lovely to be able to talk to him. Peter Fitzsimmons, enjoy. Well, Peter, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And this is going to be great timing because literally the way this podcast scheduling thing works, Andrew and I, the week before, we recap season 1, episode 4, Rachel's First Date. And the star of the show, I would say, that particular episode, Alan, that's you, Peter Fitzsimmons. So thank you for joining us.
Yes, great to be here. It's always amazing when you can look back on some of the work you've done in the business and, it comes back up and all of a sudden you're right back in those moments. It's amazing.
Yeah. So let's go back to, this episode aired 1989. So that's 34, 35 years ago. How did you get the role of Alan?
I had a good agent at the time. You got to have a good agent. That's the first thing you do when you get to Hollywood. Somehow the agent got me in on the audition process. And I'm in the room waiting, and I'm seeing names on the chart like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and everybody who's a player at that time in Hollywood seemed to be coming after this role. And I'm like, damn, how am I going to get this part? So you just keep the faith and you go in and you do the best you can at the read. And lo and behold, I got the call back, and then turned into the part, the booking, and the celebration. But yet. Then begins the hard work with the table reads and the, getting together with the cast and, trying to get accepted by them because you're like a guest, literally a guest star. And so you come on board. And in the case of Family Matters, I was so lucky to have Reginald on board and Thelma and the family of Family Matters literally, just embracing me. And, really made that whole era, that whole experience so much, enjoyable. It was really special.
So to circle back to you saying that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was also someone auditioning for the role of Alan. Andrew, I think, wasn't it season 1, episode 2? I think it was Two Income Family where Eddie was talking about wanting sneakers and it can't be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar sneakers. I wonder if Kareem was aware of that reference while he was auditioning for Alan.
There's so many coincidences that happen. You never know, what the real deal was at the time. But possibly, And there were other guys that Michael Warren was, I think, one of the producers on that. And I'd met him earlier on, because my early days in Hollywood go back to Room 222, where I was cast as a guest star. And I was the delinquent walking around the hallways with the sneaky tennis shoes. And so, there were a lot of folks involved with Family Matters that have been around. And, you got to learn how to work the game when you're in Hollywood. And I never really quite was that good at it in terms of, hobnobbing with the producers and jockeying for the next shot at the next whatever it might be. And so I never really pursued the folks like Michael Warren and some of the others that I came across in terms of the producers and the execs on that show.
There were only 3 episodes of Family Matters that had come along leading up to the episode that you appeared in. Had you already seen these first 3 episodes as sort of a way to prepare yourself as to what environment you're getting yourself into?
That would be too much to ask for. No, I had no clue what this series was about. I just knew it was a black family sitcom with some people that I wasn't that familiar with, except for Thelma. And I'd heard about her work with Orlando and Dawn. I guess I knew a little bit more about Reginald because of his work on some of the movies that he'd been in prior to Family Matters. And, you get on set and you do the table reads and you just are amazed. The music is incredible. The theme song, A Wonderful World by, Louis Armstrong. And, you just all of a sudden you're whisked away into this environment and you're on the lot. That's huge for an actor in Hollywood, just to even get on the major lot. When I got on Room 222 at 20th Century Fox, I was like just this young kid from UC Santa Cruz making my debut. And luckily I got to meet a guy named Tony Gary, who was one of the guest stars. And he took me under his wing and he later became a big sitcom star. And he taught me etiquette, commissary etiquette. What do you do at lunchtime? How do you act? Who do you see? It could be any major star could come through there. So, hopefully you meet good people that kind of shepherd you into the business. And at that time, and Family Matters may have been one of the last major things I did in Hollywood, but I'm still in the game, so I look back on it very fondly.
To your point, Peter, about being aware of Reginald VelJohnson, Andrew, I was hoping you could speak to this because talking about the work of Reginald VelJohnson before Family Matters, I think a lot of people would say it's Die Hard. And Andrew, what was your theory again about the connection between Die Hard and Family Matters?
So I've generated this whole theory that Die Hard and Family Matters are in the same universe. And after Reginald did everything he did in Die Hard, he retired but got back into the force and started working where the Winslows live now.
Right on, spot on. He was a police officer, it was like his segue into his career on Family Matters. It's funny. When I got the role of Alan Smith actually is my dad's real name. And, coincidences just start clicking in. It's like I said, it's a magical time. So part of my backstory of the part I played when I was Rachel's first date was I was from the choir. And the reason I was brought in was because, the Winslows were tired of having Thelma as the third wheel, hanging out on their date night. And so they wanted to get her off and involved with somebody. And I came along and I was a member of the church choir, which again, coincidentally, I really am a member of a church choir. I'm actually soloing this next weekend in the choir. So, at that time, I was just like, dang, this is life imitating art. And, I imagine that happens a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder if you could speak to something in the script that Andrew and I were commenting on as we were recapping the episode the week before. So Rachel is going out on this date with Alan, and it seems like it's more so she's going out because of pressure from Carl and Harriet to have a life other than being their third wheel. Did you get a sense of that, or were you just saying, Rachel just wants to innocently go out on a date, she seems to like Alan, and there you go? I
did know a little bit more of the background and the pressure because I got to talk to Reginald, in between scenes, and Carl Winslow. He was a funny guy on set, man. But yeah, during the breaks and whatnot, during the early, because you go into table reads days before you actually do the shoot, and you get to bond and talk and kind of reminisce and find out, areas where you have things in common and interests. But he kind of gave me the background about how he was suffering because he could never go out on a date with his wife and on date night and without her coming around. So, I kind of knew that background. And when I show up at the door, I'm kind of whisked away by the family while Rachel's upstairs hemming and hawing about whether she should even go downstairs and meet with me because she's got, cold feet. She hasn't dated in so long. And so I'm hanging out with the kids. They're showing me magic tricks and they're doing all this crazy stuff, trying to keep me occupied. And finally, I'm just exasperated. And she makes her way downstairs and she's gorgeous and beautiful. And I'm just, so happy to go out on this date with her.
Yeah. And Andrew, you and I were talking about the different dresses that Rachel gets to try on. banana yellow kind of Mexican dress that she was trying on with Harriet in her bedroom. And then she comes down and has this very black, flowery sort of pantsuit dress outfit. I wonder if you, Peter, had a preference as to like the many fashion statements of Rachel, whether she would look better in this outfit or that outfit, or, she was
It was
beautiful.
hilarious. When she finally came down the stairs, she looked like, she was going to the Academy Awards. She looked gorgeous. And I didn't have to act very hard to be in awe of this beautiful woman, coming down to go out with me. And I felt very privileged. But I saw the episode and I saw the machinations she went through with her various outfits. And she said, I feel like a banana. She was like, Carmen Miranda kind of style. But she knocked out every outfit she went in. It didn't matter. She could come down in a gunny sack and she still would have been outrageously beautiful.
Did you have a say in what you wore? Because, Andrew, you and I were, commenting on, I would say a very 80s Dr. Fashion statement at the time.
Yes, we agonized over my wardrobe. We went through many machinations. They wanted to nail that aspect of because a lot of the major jokes were the fact that I was a doctor, and Reginald kept making asides about, doctors cost you an arm and a leg. And I was like, yeah, I am a doctor. So like the suit that I was in, it went through a couple of machinations, but they decided on, the look that I ended up in. And it was hip. It was cool.
I would say it was a very carpet-looking suit, and we were talking about how like you had a nice hairstyle. It was sort of like a post-Jerry.
Right. Yeah, all that stuff is so important, in terms of Hollywood and how they were trying to embrace African Americans at the time. From my first breaks on into the movies and TV, there weren't a whole lot of African Americans, especially Black men, getting parts. So I broke in with Room 222, which had the lead African American, good-looking man, and so hairstyles were very key. The Jerry curl, later was the dreadlocks, and it still is so important in terms of our culture, how we express ourselves. But I am what I am. I look the way I look, and luckily they were able to work with that.
Now, for your guest appearance, can you kind of take us through the process from day one of rehearsal up until tape night? Like, what was that week-long process like?
It was a roller coaster ride. You start out by it's like, hi, you doing? Hi, I'm so-and-so, welcome. And here's what we do. And we're going to have lunch together, and we just kind of getting to know each other. Then all of a sudden there's this separate kind of road you're on, which is the pressure cooker of the table reads. And they're trying to nail every joke, every nanosecond, and make it better. And they're constantly coming with pages of rewrites. And, the actor's like, oh my God, I thought I nailed that. Oh, we're going to try it this way now. It just kept evolving because they wanted to perfect it to the 10th degree. I mean, that's the process that I really learned on Family Matters on a live set. So day two, I'm like, okay, this is how it's going to be. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to nail this table read, and I'm going to try to be, cool and like relax. But I'm really like, damn, I hope I get this right, And then it's, like you're memorizing the lines, but they keep changing, and you're looking for allies. You're looking for people saying, hey, good job. So like on day 3, day 4, before we get into the real heavy crux of live audience participation. And, it's like you're doing and I have a theater background. So when I start, it's like A to Z. You're on a freight train and you don't fall off the train. You just keep that train on track by, going forward with your lines and your emotions and, your play acting. But so when we got to like Wednesday of the shoot week, I could feel the intensity rising. And then I could see, Reginald and Darius and the Family Matters folks kind of like, we do this all the time. This is like, we'll get over it. Everything's cool. So, I know it, Andrew, I mean, it's a lot of stories, but it did intensify. And then you get to the day of the shoot, man, all of a sudden you got this warm up comedian guy out in the audience in front of you. He's warming up the audience so that they are ready to laugh on cue. So, sitcom making is a whole other world, man. I'm so happy to get a chance to even reminisce about it.
Were you given an opportunity to contribute jokes or lines as to the character of Alan or any other part of the episode? Did the writers give you that opportunity, or did you want that opportunity?
Yeah, you do. You always want to get a little bit of creativity. If you get you want an inch, you take a mile. But they kind of control all those instincts and impulses. However, during table reads, sometimes, improvisation happens. And I was, from the background of improvisation, so I was ready to roll at any given moment. Maybe one or two improv thoughts or lines made it onto the script. I don't really recall anything major, but like even just the breakdown of how I reacted to when the children were doing the magic card tricks. And he's like, is this your card? He pulled out a bunch of playing cards, and I had to, he was trying to figure out which card I was thinking about. And I'd go, no. And go, how about this one? And I'd go, no. And it kind of, there was a build to it that I had to really nail as I got more and more exasperated with this kid taking up my time with this ridiculous, magic trick. But yet I couldn't offend him because he's like the younger guy in the family. So I had to play along, and it was hilarious, man.
So Darius McCrary, Kelly Williams, and Jamie Foxworth. Some adult actors, they don't have the greatest experience with child actors. What was your experience with them?
Yeah, man. Jamie Foxx was, she was the one that came down and she's, I want to sing a song. And they were like, oh my God, okay. And so she was going to break into the song, and then they said, why don't you play this other song? She was, I don't know that one. But these kids were, I don't know how much experience they had in terms of showbiz, but they were all just electric and well cast and highly believable. So for me to play off of them was a joy.
And you had mentioned having a great chemistry, fittingly enough, with Rachel Thelma Hopkins. You guys bonded not only over the role, but also your love of jazz music. Can you talk about, just in as much length as you want, the chemistry and the rapport that you guys had both on and off camera?
Yeah, off camera, I got to, she was telling me about her, her lifelong ambitions in terms of being a singer and hooking up with, you always get breaks, right? And you always share those with other actors, like, oh, wow, all of a sudden I got to meet Tony Orlando, and he took me on as one of his Dawn members. And she was reliving the excitement of getting those breaks. And I was like, yeah, well, I had this other break where I got cast as Caliban in The Tempest. And I was like, okay, so we're just like, sharing stories about, accomplishments and breaks that we had. And she was just down to earth. And, sometimes you get in a Hollywood situation where it's not like that, where the actor is not that friendly or that supportive. And you never like to talk down on fellow actors because we're all in this family together. And it's a tough road, as we all know. But in her case, it was like exceptionally gracious and exceptionally, forthcoming, and just shared a lot of stories together.
And you are notably in what a lot of people today would say is one of the pre-Urkel episodes of Family Matters. I wonder, as the show went on, as Steve Urkel appeared and became the star, if you tuned into the show, what you thought of it, if you did.
I did. Urkel caught everybody by surprise. I had a lot of smoke blown at me during the shooting by some of the ABC bigwigs who thought I was doing a really incredible job. They enjoyed my humor, my I don't know what, the way I handled myself and the way I looked at that time. So I was, almost like dangled carrots talking about, future guest starring episodes, which is what every actor wants to hear. Oh, yeah, I'm in now. But of course, Urkel came on and he blew everybody's mind. His storylines became much, much larger than anything I'd ever seen before in episodic TV. The kid was brilliant. I mean, he played a nerd beyond nerd. I look back on that guy with his suspenders and his high water pants, and he was hilarious. I was a big fan of his after that. Just even though I felt like I was kind of shooed away from that, that opportunity to continue on with that family in the role that maybe could have gone another direction. However, Urkel deserved what he did on that show because he was hilarious. He was brilliant.
Yeah, I was going to say, because based on how Rachel's first date ended, I mean, she seemed to like Alan very well, and it seemed like Alan could have been more than a one-shot appearance. So did the producers just kind of get sidetracked and wanted to go in another direction?
That's my feeling. And probably my perspective on what went down with that experience. In that I never did come back. I was just patted on the back and said, good job, which was, a lot at that time, just to even get that, kudos. But in terms of where they were going with the series, it was obvious that it took a left turn. And I knew Carl and even the kids on the show were like, wow, okay, we're going to roll with this because this is giving us ratings, which is the all important ratings. Urkel really lended to that, their success going forward.
Andrew, do you have any family matters or general career questions for Peter?
Well, a couple of things. Like, I always wondered on a set, is it like living in a small city as you're working through a work piece that you're doing?
Oh yeah, you get there and you got a parking spot. Okay, I'm in the garage, but I got a parking spot. I'm waved in by the guard. Now, back as a struggling young actor, you could go to these studios and you could be on standing out on the street, like looking at like, how do I get in there? Because there's a guard. And he's like, you came to see who, and you are who, and they're like, no, you ain't coming in here. Now I'm inside this life, this world, and you go to your parking spot and then you hustle on over to the set. And on the way over, you might see two or three other actors in a movie outfit. They're shooting something else. Joe versus the Volcano was being shot on the same set, and those kind of coincidences are fun to you never know what you're going to expect when you get to the set.
When you're on that set and you see like Joe versus Volcano being filmed, are you trying to get in there and talk to people to build connections, or what would be your tactic as you're walking through?
If I was more of the hustler that I probably wasn't, but I could have been and should have been, I would have been in there like going, Tom Hanks, well, who are you? And wow, can I be your best friend? And can we work together? But, you have to take it all with a grain of salt. You can't be like, oh my God, I just saw, Charlton Heston. But anything was possible. And I didn't really use those experiences to try to boost my career path. I was more of, at that time, take it as it come kind of actor, be happy for the small breaks you get and just keep moving. But I wasn't really working the environment as I could have.
That's amazing. I just always wonder what those interactions are like. And then I know you mentioned you have a theater background. So how was it going from a theater background to getting onto something that was a sitcom? Were there things that you thought that really helped you or hindered you through that?
It did, because I had stamina from doing stage. Like I was saying earlier, you started at point A and you go to point Z, and you're on a freight train, or you're on the A train, or you're on a subway car, and you're moving. And if you if you get unfocused, or you lose sight of what interaction is, you stop looking at your fellow actors, which will help you, guide you, get you through moments that are unexpected, then you could easily get lost. So I had many, many plays under my belt where I knew that I have to stay focused, stay in the moment, and stay real and true to myself in the character, which means, a lot of homework, a lot of backstory, a lot of make-believe, which is why I was in the business in the first place, because I love that aspect of it. So, stage, I think, really helps any actor with the discipline needed to get to the next level in film. And then there's so many other tricks of the trade that you pick up from other folks that help you, or you just get trained, or maybe you get schooled, maybe you go to class, maybe you learn from a director or fellow actor on how to keep your two eyes on the camera lens, that kind of thing.
Those are things we don't think of, where you have to know where your camera is. And when you get into a character through anything that you've done, do you ever just live your life as that character for some time outside of the set and recording, or is that something you don't do?
You do. There's like, the story of the kind of actor that becomes the character, so much so that he stays in character. And that, sometimes can be helpful because you stay focused and there's not too much that can budge you off of your mindset, especially if it's an intense character that you really got to bring it every time to the set. And when the guy says action, and you got to come with what you're prepared to do. So again, that goes back to stage and preparation and discipline. But there's other times where you're on the set, like I'm on the set with Superfly. I remember I was working on a episode of Frank's Place, and I get on the set and I'm cast as the light-skinned brother along with Ron O'Neal in this episode, dealing with some kind of social justice controversy, taboo, where we did this brown paper bag test with the lead on Frank's Place to let him into our club of light-skinned brothers. And I show up on the set and there's Superfly. And I'm like, whoa, man, this is Ron O'Neal, brother. This is Superfly. And he's like, hey, what's happening, man? You want to get high? And I'm like, and he's just like, it's like way too cool for school. And he shows up on the set, man. I don't think he even read the script. He's just like butter. He nails every freaking line in every moment as we go forward and shoot the thing. So that's just another memory of my experiences in Hollywood.
Well, that is amazing. Now, for this episode that we had, Family Matters, with you on it, were there any moments that we didn't see that you would hope would have been a part of the episode that officially aired?
Yeah, I would have, in terms of developing that character and that relationship with Thelma, I would have liked to see maybe a few more moments after the date when I brought her back home and maybe the kiss goodbye or we had so much fun together that there's a warm, fuzzy feeling that I'm left with. And I'm like looking forward to seeing you again because, you are too much and you are wonderful. And I'd like to explore this relationship further. Those kind of moments weren't really established. It was really like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You did the do, you took her out. Thank you. Later. So, you always wanted a little bit more.
Not only do you have this wonderful background in acting, Peter, but I'm really fascinated by your background in jazz. You're the founding executive director of the San Francisco Jazz Heritage Center, among many things. Can you just take us through the foundation of your love for jazz and also like what makes San Francisco stand out in terms of jazz artistry?
Man, it's wild, man, because again, my dad, Alan Smith, was one of the major players in an area called the Fillmore, which is legendary jazz mecca, sometimes compared to or referred to as Harlem of the West. And so when I got a chance to work with the developer to create the Jazz Heritage Center, I jumped on it. It was a chance to honor my dad, the legends of jazz who I knew personally, going back to the Bop City era, which was a jazz club in the Fillmore, where all the greats from New York and everywhere around the world would come through and jam and hang out and stay up all night throughout the weekend. And I was the Bop City baby at that moment. I was literally there as a little baby, just taking it in with dad on stage playing with all the greats, John Coltrane, John Handy, Frank Fisher, and on and on and on. They all came through Bop City. So when I got tasked with doing the Jazz Heritage Center, it was a natural. My mom was involved with the redevelopment agency. She was trying to create a jazz preservation district. Again, congruity, all these things came together. And I was able to run this organization, this nonprofit, where we literally daily were trying to, figure out how to honor the legends of jazz through art, through interviews, through filmmaking, any way possible. We created jazz billboards of musicians' photos, I had a photo contest, a worldwide photo contest to get the content to put in these billboards that are still to this day on the side of the building on Fillmore and Eddy Street. And they were jazz musicians, like 90 of them, legendaries. Coltrane, again, all of them, Louis Armstrong, all the great singers that came through there, Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald. And so that was just part of what I did to honor the heritage and history of jazz. And then, that thing kind of ended, and we kind of had we had a moment where it's like, okay, moving on. So now, years later, I come back around, and I'm hired by a friend of mine. Darlene she's in charge of what's called the Fillmore Jazz Ambassadors, and she knew my background. She knew my love of jazz, and so I became the jazz historian for this new group that is currently operating in the Fillmore, creating concerts and lifting jazz folks and whatnot. But just to end up on a good note with this interaction, then I segued into not only being a jazz historian and doing opening remarks and tributing like Charles Sullivan and other greats from the African American history in the Fillmore related to jazz and promotions and whatnot. Then I became the executive producer of a documentary film called 150 Years of Jazz History in San Francisco, dating back to the Barbary Coast. Now I'm in my wheelhouse, man. I'm all over this project because, we're doing oral history collecting. We're honoring the heritage and history of jazz, including my dad and others, many others. And it's just like a labor of love. And we're in production on that one. And then I'm also doing another documentary, Social History, African American Story, called the SNCC 5. So I'm still hanging in there. I love to act. When I get a shot at it, I do it. I take it. I work a lot with the Academy of Art in San Francisco with young filmmakers, and I do short films with them that sometimes win awards and go to film festivals. But my work in jazz is pretty, it's taken up a lot of my time.
And I wonder, as you're like approaching a role, is there some elements from your love and work from jazz that you incorporate into your acting preparation?
Yeah, man. Just off the top, improvisation is like key to jazz. And, you do phrasing and you come in and you lift up this other person. It's the same in acting. You improvise, you just try to take it to another level. You try to push the envelope at some point. And, all within, your creative, talents. You got to stay with what you got, inside of what you can do. But music it's my life. It's my love. It's my passion, as is acting.
I love that. Any last questions, Andrew?
You did an episode of Man, Moment, and Machine. And I remember watching the episode because I am obsessed with history. And I just have to know, what was that like for you doing that episode?
I'm glad you brought that up. I walked in, I auditioned for the role of Colin Powell. And they said, don't even read. You got it. Put on the glasses, the hat. You got Colin Powell. But they said, but by the way, would you be interested in doing this other part that we have on, scheduled to do? And that's on, the man who invented the gas mask, Garrett Morgan. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to try out for that. He goes, no, you don't have to try out. You got that too. And I was like, what? Okay. Who's Garrett Morgan? Turns out this brother invented the stoplight. He invented hair straightener. He did all this great stuff as an inventor, never got any credit. And, we all know about, institutionalized racism, and other factors that are involved with, how we are perceived in history. But this brother, he created a lot, and I got to play him from, early age to later in life. And it was the History Channel. So it wasn't like star making material necessarily, although I was viewed as Garrett Morgan. It was wonderful, a wonderful opportunity to portray that. So I went from Colin Powell to Garrett Morgan.
That is a huge transition. Did that change how you felt about history's expression in art?
Absolutely. It just whetted my appetite. I said, okay, I've got a friend who wrote a book, 2001, African Americans that nobody's ever heard of. It's movies and TV series in the making. We haven't even tapped it yet, but we will. But, Garrett Morgan was one of those brothers that's in that book of African Americans that nobody knows about. Because, suppressed, that history is suppressed. And so we're trying to, we're doubling back. We're gonna honor and uplift a lot of stories that haven't been really yet told.
How do you think Family Matters is in the history books in terms of African American culture?
That show, and then with Urkel and what he portrayed in terms of kind of like the clown, the nerd, they told a lot of stories that, kind of opened up some eyes to some stuff that maybe wasn't necessarily, honored or seen. And I think deservedly so, Family Matters. Cosby was, huge. How he turned things around for African Americans as they were portrayed on TV. And then it goes on and on and on. And now here we are, we got all kinds of shows going on. And Tyler Perry and great minds, and great performers and great actors, and a lot to be proud of as we move forward. And we're still struggling, but we're making so much progress. And I think, again, Family Matters. I mean, the fact that you're even doing this podcast, touching back on the memories of that show, it's because it was meaningful. It had an impact, and it portrayed a loving family in a beautiful scene and setting with a grandmother who was wise, and she would offer advice, and the funny husband and wife dramas that are just commonplace. You never saw it in a Black family portrayed necessarily on TV, so it was important.
Absolutely. Well, Peter Fitzsimmons, we, of course, will always love you as Alan from Rachel's First Date, but we also want to know, how can we find you and what are you up to these days?
Lots going on in San Francisco, which is where I live. I'm up in the hills of Oakland, and I'm working, as I said, a Fillmore Jazz ambassador. So we're creating concerts. In 2004, we're going to have a whole slew of concerts where I will give opening acts and opening remarks and testimonials towards, the legends of jazz and folks that deserve more credit than they've gotten, so perhaps. And we're working with great musicians, Dewey and Maestro and a bunch of folks that we're promoting throughout the community up here in San Francisco. So you'll see me on that set. We're also breaking ground with the Academy of Art because they have something in place called Thursday Night Live, and we're going to collaborate with them and help them, discover some other musical talents that we actually are promoting. And we'll have a chance to do some concerts at the Art Academy in Golden Gate Park. We also did a concert at the Band Shell where we had 5 of our bands play up there, and that was successful, and people got to see some good music and some jazz and a lot of folks coming through there. So that's my base. I'm in the Bay Area, but going forward with the documentaries that I'm working on, I'm going to be in Atlanta. I'm going to be in Hollywood. I'm going to be back. I'm going to be jumping all around because there's a lot of work that we're doing it's going to take me outside of the city.
And I'm sure you'll be promoting some of this wonderful work on social media. How can we keep in touch with you?
Right. So Facebook is right now, yes, Peter Fitzsimmons Facebook.
Well, Peter, we love that you spent like the last 40 or so minutes with us sharing your experiences with Family Matters and your experiences with other aspects of your career. And thank you. I think I speak for Andrew when I say you're our first special guest. So this means a lot to us for this podcast.
Well, thank you. You and Andrew are doing the right work because it's a chance to honor some of the accomplishments that we had. And you're bringing attention back to some of the stuff that maybe got a little bit passed over. But, we've got these accomplishments. We gotta, lift them up and say, this is what we are about. We're moving forward because we're doing this, that, and the other thing. So pay attention and stay tuned.
Any closing thoughts for Peter, Andrew, before we let him go?
Peter, thank you so much for being here and talking with us. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you just taking the time to just be here. So thank you again. And I'm excited. I can't wait to see your documentary. I can't wait to learn more about jazz. I already love music, so this is just even more I'm excited to learn.
Yes, it's our lifeblood, man. We keep it going.
Well, thank you, Peter.
It's nice to be with you guys. Thanks so much.
Well, that was fun.
That was a lot of fun.
So, yeah, what I was taken aback by as I was hearing Peter speak, there's just a sort of, there's just sort of a beautiful intelligence behind this man that is not that different from the Alan that we saw on Rachel's First Date. And it really makes me wonder, man, if they had done similar to what they did with Steve Urkel, brought Alan back, what storylines that could have led to.
I think it would have been pretty amazing. Just listening to him talk, I'm like, okay, tell me everything I need to know about the existence of life and space and humanity, because I just get the feeling you know it. And he's got that very comforting, welcoming voice where you're like, okay, I could see you on the show. I could have seen Alan as a reoccurring character. It would have been so cool to see him and Rachel get to know each other. And then maybe Rachel moves out. Judy would have had a place to stay. And it would not have been bad.
Yeah. And then we could have possibly had a spinoff. Judy, Alan, and Rachel in Seattle.
Boom.
If Alan were to come back for more than one appearance in the show, I could easily see a reoccurring joke being him just continuously humble bragging about how rich and wealthy he is, and Carl just being like, "Oh, okay, all right, so you do own all of San Francisco. Okay, all right, Rachel, please don't leave this guy."
I could see Carl turning into what would that person be called? Not the Bridezilla, but the stepbrother of the Bridezilla. No, the brother-in-law-zilla. That is what he would turn into. Please follow Peter Fitzsimmons. This was an amazing interview that we got to have. And I'm definitely going to watch his documentaries. And if I can make it to one of these jazz shows, John, I love jazz, so we need to go see some jazz.
Another surprising way that you and I are a kindred spirit, because I honestly have had I would say a back and forth decent relationship with jazz going back to freshman year of college. I think it started with smooth jazz, and then I got into other forms of jazz like bebop and swing and what they call cool jazz. I loved the jazz documentary by Ken Burns. I watched that Miles Davis documentary that was in select theaters for a little while, but then was on Netflix for a little bit. And we all know Miles as a person was an asshole, but as a jazz musician, a genius. So yes. And you know what? Actually, I went to go see some live jazz when I went to college in Philadelphia for a short time. They have a great jazz thing out there. Do they have some jazz out there in Rochester, New York, where you are?
We have a massive jazz festival, which now I'm kicking myself. I went to ask Peter if he's been to it. So the Jazz Festival here in Rochester, it celebrated its 50th year, I think last year, and tons of people come. I know Coltrane was here before. A few other artists that were really big have been here before. We've got the Eastman School of Music, which they have their own jazz thing that happens, and it's pretty cool. So I love jazz. I could just sit and listen to almost any kind of jazz and just enjoy it. But I played in jazz band in high school, and I never did a solo because I was too afraid.
You know how great jazz bands can sound, and there's nothing more pressuring than being that jazz solo person. Like, I mean, I've seen, to go back to Miles Davis, his bands, and the person who has to get up and do like a piano solo or saxophone solo. And Miles, I think he was a pretty demanding perfectionist. So to do that solo and like have Miles like hearing you and watching you, I can only imagine the pressure on that person. And like you, so I was never like actually a part of my school's jazz band, but through like other family members of mine being involved in the school bands, I got to go see the jazz band as part of like the overall school concert. It was always my favorite part because like once that percussion gets going, once the trumpets and everything get going, man, it's, you know, you kind of wonder like, why isn't this like an integral part of today's pop music?
It just feels good. Like, even though I never played a solo, just playing with the jazz band, we would play the same song with just different hooks and different chord progression for hours. And it didn't feel like we were playing music that long because we all enjoyed it so much. Maybe more.
I'm coming here from Colchester, Vermont, which is like about 15 minutes away from the major city in this state, Burlington. And Burlington always has a major jazz festival that's usually outdoors. I believe it happens every summer. And I've heard good things about it, but yet in the 5 years that I've been in Vermont, I've never gone. So I think next summer, especially since you still owe me a trip to my home state of Vermont, we should consider going to the Burlington Jazz Festival.
I am down. I will be there.
So obviously, I got to keep in touch with Peter and see if maybe he can like invite us into some free San Francisco jazz, because I've never been to San Francisco. That would be a great introduction to the city. And for you listening, as usual, not only can you follow Peter's stuff, but you can follow us. We are on Facebook at The Delicious Recap Family Matters. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, on Twitter /X at Delicious Recap, and send us an email with feedback, questions, comments, concerns for Peter, for us, criticism, whatever, thedeliciousrecap@gmail.com. All right, Andrew, you want to sign off at least this episode with our classic slogan?
Yes, and I was kind of kicking myself. I went to ask Peter to say it. I know, right? I had the same reaction. I was like, what?
Oh, we got to do that for our next guest, Rich Coral, when he comes on in a couple of weeks from the day that we're recording this.
Yes, we'll see if he can do it because I would love it. Let deliciousness ring.